The snow on 22C's third moon was not like the snow had seen in old Earth videos. It did not fall soft and gentle. It came down hard and sharp, like tiny pieces of glass that cut into any skin left uncovered. The wind howled between the metal buildings of the mining colony, and the sky above was always gray, always angry, always cold. Was 8 years old. He walked through the snow with his hands pushed deep into the pockets of his coat. The coat was too thin and too small. It had belonged to another boy once, a boy whose family had earned enough credits to leave this frozen rock and go somewhere better. Had found it in the donation bin outside the refinery where his mother worked. It was Christmas Eve. Knew this because he had been counting the days on the little calendar his father had drawn for him before the accident. 2 years ago, his father had gone down into the mines and never come back. The tunnel had collapsed. They never even found his body. After that, stopped believing in a lot of things. Was just one of them. His mother was working tonight. She worked every night now. Triple shifts at the refinery, breathing in the dust and chemicals that made her cough so hard sometimes that she could not stand up straight. The mining company did not care. There were always more workers coming from the inner planets, desperate people looking for any job at all. Had eaten his dinner alone. It was the same thing he ate every night. A protein pack that tasted like cardboard and a cup of recycled water. He had sat at their small table and looked at the empty chair where his father used to sit, and he had decided that he did not want to be inside anymore. So he walked. The colony was not large. There were the housing units where the workers lived, packed together like boxes. There was the refinery that never stopped smoking. There was the administrative center where the managers lived in heated rooms with real food and real windows. And beyond all of that, there were the mountains. Walked toward the mountains. He did not know why. Maybe he just wanted to be somewhere that humans had not touched yet. Somewhere that was not metal and smoke and sadness. The snow came up to his knees and every step was hard, but he kept going. His mother would not be home for hours. No one would notice he was gone. The cave appeared out of nowhere. One moment was pushing through a snowdrift, and the next moment he was standing at the entrance to a hole in the mountainside. Steam rose from inside, warm and wet against his frozen face. He thought it must be a thermal vent. The moon had many of them, places where heat from deep underground broke through to the surface. He went inside. The cave was large, much larger than he had expected. The walls were dark stone that glittered with minerals, and the floor was smooth, almost polished. The warmth wrapped around like a blanket, and he let out a breath he had not known he was holding. Then he saw the eyes. They opened in the darkness at the back of the cave. 2 eyes, each one larger than his entire body, glowing with a light that was gold and red and ancient. The eyes were attached to a head, and the head was attached to a neck, and the neck was attached to a body so massive that could not see where it ended. Scales covered every inch of the creature. They were the color of dying stars, dark purple and deep red and black that seemed to swallow the light. Wings lay folded against the creature's sides, and even folded, they stretched from one wall of the cave to the other. Claws the length of swords dug into the stone floor. Had heard stories about every child on the colony had. They were the dragons who had lived on this moon before humans came. They had been here for thousands of years, maybe millions, ancient and powerful and proud. When the mining ships arrived, they had fought back. There had been a war. The humans won. They always won. Most of them had fled to distant moons and planets where humans had not yet reached. Some had died fighting, and some, the stories said, had simply hidden themselves away and waited to die alone. Should have run. He knew that. Any sensible person would have run screaming back to the colony to tell everyone that a dragon was living in the mountains, but was very tired of running. He was tired of being cold and hungry and sad. And the dragon's eyes, though ancient and strange, did not look angry. They looked lonely. "You should not be here, small human," the dragon said. Her voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together, but there was something soft underneath it, something broken. Your kind drove us from these caves long ago. Sat down on the warm stone floor. His legs ached from walking through the snow, and the heat felt so good that he did not want to move ever again. I know, he said. I'm sorry about that. The dragon blinked. It was a slow movement like watching a door close and open. You are sorry. Yeah, pulled his knees up to his chest and wrapped his arms around them. It wasn't fair. What happened to your people? My dad used to tell me about it. He said we took your home because we wanted what was under the ground, and we didn't even ask if you were willing to share. For a long moment, the dragon said nothing. She simply stared at this small human child who had wandered into her cave on the coldest night of the year and apologized for a war that had happened before he was born. Why are you here? She finally asked. Shrugged, his throat felt tight, the way it always did when he thought about his father and his mother and all the things he did not have. Mom said overlooked us again this year. I figured I would find somewhere quiet to be sad. What is? So told her. He told her about the old Earth stories, about the kind man in the red suit who flew through the sky and brought presents to children who were good. He told her about how he used to leave cookies by the door and wake up early to see what it brought. He told her about how the presents stopped coming after his father died, and how his mother always said that was very busy, that there were so many children in the galaxy now, that maybe next year would be different. But it's never different, said quietly. I think just doesn't come to places like this. Mining moons, poor places, places that nobody cares about. The dragon lowered her massive head until her eye was level with his face. Up close, he could see that her scales were marked with old wounds that had never fully healed. One of her wings hung at a strange angle, damaged in a way that would never be right again. I am called, she said. I have not spoken my name to anyone in many years. Smiled, it was a small smile, but it was real. I'm nice to meet you. And in the warm darkness of the cave, on the coldest night of the year, a human boy and a dragon sat together and began to talk. Had lived for 400 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars die and new ones be born. She had flown through the darkness between worlds when her wings were still strong, and she had fought in battles that had shaken the foundations of moons. In all that time, no human had ever sat with her and simply talked. The boy called spoke without fear. He told her about his life in the colony, about the small metal room where he and his mother lived, about the school where the other children laughed at his old clothes and his empty lunch box. He told her about his father, how he used to tell stories and sing songs and make everything feel safe, even when the world outside was hard and cold. He used to say that humans were meant for more than just digging in the dirt, said. He was sitting cross-legged on the cave floor now, his small hands resting on his knees. He said we came to the stars because we wanted to find something beautiful, not just something valuable. But I think people forgot that along the way. Listened. She had not listened to anyone in decades. After the war, after she had watched her clutchmates die and her home burn, she had come to this cave and sworn that she would never speak to a human again. She had waited for death the way one waits for an old friend who is late arriving. But death had not come. And now this child was here, talking to her as if she were not a monster, as if she were not the enemy, as if she were simply another lonely creature on a frozen moon who needed someone to hear her. Your father sounds like a wise human, said. He was, his voice went quiet. I miss him every day. I too have lost family. Looked up at her. His eyes were brown, warm like the earth that had not seen in centuries. In the war. Yes, my sisters, my brothers, my mother who was older than the mountains of this moon, closed her eyes. The memories were old now, worn smooth like stones in a river, but they still hurt. We did not want to fight. We only wanted to keep our home. But your kind came with fire and metal, and we were not strong enough to stop them. I'm sorry, said again. You keep saying that. You did not do these things. You were not even born. I know, but someone should say it. Someone should tell you that it was wrong and that they're sorry. Rubbed his hands together. Despite the warmth of the cave, his fingers were still red from the cold outside. My dad said that's how you start to fix things. You say sorry and then you try to do better. Did not know what to say to that. In 400 years, she had learned many things about humans. She had learned that they were greedy. She had learned that they were violent. She had learned that they took and took and took until there was nothing left to take. But she had never learned that they could be kind. "Are you hungry?" she asked. Shook his head, but his stomach made a sound that told a different story. His face went red with embarrassment. "I have little to offer," said. "But there is warmth here, and you are welcome to stay until you are ready to return to your home." "Thank you," reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and wrapped in paper. "I have this. It's not much, but we could share it." It was a ration bar. Knew what these were. They were the food that the mining company gave to its workers, cheap and tasteless and barely enough to keep a body alive. The bar held was small, designed for a single person, and from the look of the boy's thin arms and hollow cheeks, he needed every bit of it. But he broke it in half anyway. He held one half up towards massive head, his arm stretched as high as it could reach. The piece of food was so small in comparison to her that she could barely see it. "Here," said, "nobody should be hungry on Christmas." Stared at him. The ration bar was nothing to her. It was smaller than one of her teeth. It would do nothing to fill her stomach. But the act of giving it, the simple kindness of a child who had nothing offering to share what little he had, struck her like a blow. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you share your food with me? I am a dragon. I am the enemy of your people. You should fear me." Lowered his arm and looked at her with those warm brown eyes. "You look sad," he said. "Sad like me. And my dad always said that when someone is sad, you try to help them. Even if you don't have much, you give what you can." He held the ration bar up again. "Please take it. It would make me feel better." Lowered her head. Very carefully, more gently than she had ever done anything in her long life, she took the tiny piece of food from the boy's hand. She felt it on her tongue for just a moment before it was gone, tasteless and small and worth nothing. And yet worth everything. "Thank you," she said. The boy smiled. It changed his whole face. For a moment he did not look tired or hungry or sad. He looked like what he was, a child who had found a friend on a cold night. "You're welcome," he said. "Now we're sharing Christmas together. That's how it's supposed to be." He ate his half of the ration bar in small bites, making it last as long as possible. When he was done, he leaned back against the cave wall and closed his eyes. Within minutes, his breathing became slow and even. He had fallen asleep. Watched him. This tiny human, this child who had wandered into her cave and treated her with more kindness than she had received in 4 centuries. She thought about all the reasons she had to hate his kind. The wars, the deaths, the stolen home, the long years of loneliness and waiting for the end. And she thought about a broken ration bar, split in half by hands that were shaking from hunger. Something shifted in her chest. It was a feeling she had not felt in a very long time. It took her many minutes to recognize it. Hope. As the night grew deeper and the wind howled outside the cave, made a decision. She could not fly anymore. Her wings were too damaged, too broken from old battles, but she could still walk. She could still speak. And she could still breathe fire hot enough to melt metal. She would not use that fire to burn. She would use it to protect. Very carefully, she curled her body around the sleeping boy, forming a wall of scales and warmth between him and the cold world outside. He stirred in his sleep and moved closer to her, his small hand resting against her scales as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Sleep well, little one," whispered. "Tomorrow I will make sure that does not overlook you again." She did not know yet how she would keep that promise, but she knew that she would find a way. After 400 years of hatred, a child with a broken ration bar had taught her something new. Kindness was a choice, and she was ready to choose. The night was at its darkest when began to move, was still asleep, curled against her side like a small warm stone. She lifted him with care that surprised even herself, cradling his tiny body between her claws as if he were made of glass. He weighed nothing to her. He was so small, so fragile, so easily broken by the world that had already taken so much from him. She walked out of the cave and into the snow. The cold did not bother her. Dragon scales were made for worse things than frozen wind. She moved through the night like a shadow, her massive body leaving deep tracks in the snow that the wind quickly filled in behind her. The colony lights glowed in the distance, small and weak against the endless dark of the sky. She had not been this close to humans in decades, not since the war, not since she had watched her family die and sworn that she would never forgive. But tonight was different. Tonight, she carried a sleeping child who had shared his last meal with a monster, and she was going to make sure that his kindness was repaid. The housing units were even worse than she had imagined. They were metal boxes stacked on top of each other, thin walls and cheaper doors, built fast and cheap by a company that did not care if the workers inside froze or starved or died. Found the one that belonged to by following his scent. It was easy to pick out. He smelled like cold and hunger and something else, something warm underneath it all. Hope. He smelled like hope. She laid him down outside the door, positioning him gently against the wall where he would be found in the morning. Then she looked inside through the small, dirty window. The room was exactly as had described it. A table with 2 chairs, one of them empty. A bed against the wall where a woman lay sleeping, her face lined with exhaustion even in rest. Medical bills were spread across the table, numbers that added up to more than a worker could ever earn. The walls were bare. There was no tree, no decorations, no sign that tomorrow was supposed to be a special day. Felt anger rise in her chest. It was an old anger, familiar and hot, the same anger she had felt during the war. But this time it was not directed at all humans. It was directed at the ones who had done this. The ones who had taken and taken and taken while giving nothing back. She turned away from the housing units and looked toward the other side of the colony. There, beyond a fence and a gate and a row of guards, stood the administrative center. The buildings there were different. They had real walls, thick and insulated. They had windows that glowed with warm light. They had gardens under heated domes and vehicles that ran on clean energy instead of the dirty fuel that the workers had to breathe every day. That was where the mine owners lived. The managers. The people who decided how much food the workers received and how many hours they had to work, and whether the medical care they needed was worth the cost. Walked toward the gate. The guards saw her coming. Of course they did. She was not trying to hide. She was a dragon, ancient and terrible, walking through the snow with fire glowing behind her teeth. They screamed and ran for their weapons, but she did not give them time to use them. She breathed a stream of fire into the sky. It lit up the night like a second sun, bright enough to wake everyone in the colony, hot enough to melt the snow for 100 meters in every direction. The guards dropped their weapons and fled. "Come out," roared. Her voice echoed off the mountains and shook the ground beneath her feet. "Come out and face me, you who sit in warmth while children freeze, you who feast while workers starve. Come out." Doors opened. People emerged, wrapped in expensive coats and confused expressions. They were the executives, the managers, the ones who made the decisions. They looked at with fear in their eyes, the same fear she had seen during the war when humans faced dragons in battle. But she had not come to fight. "You have forgotten you're young," she said. Her voice was still loud, still powerful, but she was not roaring anymore. She was speaking. "You have forgotten what your species once believed. A child on this colony, a boy who has nothing, shared his last food with me tonight. He broke his only meal in half and gave it to a monster because he believed that no one should be alone. He believed that kindness was more important than survival. The executives stared at her. None of them spoke. "I have lived for 400 years," continued. "I have watched your kind spread across the stars like fire. I have seen you build and destroy, create and consume. I hated you for what you did to my people. I swore that I would never forgive." She took a step closer, and the executive stepped back. "But tonight, a human child taught me something that 4 centuries of war and grief could not. He taught me that hatred is a choice, and if hatred is a choice, then so is kindness." She looked at each of them in turn, meeting their eyes with her ancient gaze. "You have chosen greed. You have chosen cruelty. You have chosen to sit in comfort while the people who make your wealth suffer and die. That is your choice, but I am asking you now to choose differently." One of the executives, a man in a thick coat with soft hands that had never done hard work, found his voice. "What do you want?" "I want you to see," said. "I want you to walk through those housing units and look at the people who work for you. I want you to see the children who go hungry and the parents who cannot afford medicine. I want you to remember that they are human beings, not tools to be used and thrown away." "And if we refuse?" Opened her mouth and fire glowed behind her teeth. "Then I will remind you every night until you cannot sleep. I will stand at your gates and I will speak, and the whole galaxy will hear what kind of people you are. I do not need to burn your buildings. The truth will burn bright enough on its own." She turned and began to walk away. Then she stopped and looked back over her shoulder. "That boy's name is," she said. "His father died in your mines. His mother is sick from your factory. He has nothing. And yet he gave half of everything he had to a stranger because he believed it was the right thing to do. Ask yourselves this: what have you given?" She disappeared into the night, leaving the executives standing in the melted snow, their expensive coats suddenly feeling very thin. What none of them knew was that a young journalist named Sarah Park had been watching from her window. She had come to the colony 3 months ago to write about worker conditions, and the mining company had done everything they could to stop her. They had blocked her access, threatened her sources, and tried to have her sent away. But they could not block what had just happened. Sarah had recorded everything on her personal device, and as words echoed in the night, she was already uploading the video to every network she could reach. By morning, the entire galaxy would see a dragon defending a human child. And nothing would ever be the same. The video spread like fire across dry grass. It started on the small networks, the independent news channels that covered stories the big corporations did not want told. A dragon standing in the snow. A dragon speaking about kindness. A dragon defending a child she had every reason to hate. Within an hour, it had reached Mars. Within 2 hours, it was on Earth. By the time the sun rose over the colony on 22C's third moon, the video had been watched by 3 billion people, and the number was still climbing. Sarah Park had titled it simply, "A Dragon's Christmas Message." But the words that people remembered, the words that spread from person to person like a prayer, were different. "A child on this colony shared his last food with me tonight. He broke his only meal in half and gave it to a monster because he believed that no one should be alone." People wept when they heard it. They argued about it. They could not stop talking about it. On Earth, where Christmas was still celebrated in the old ways, families gathered around their screens and watched the video again and again. They saw the dragon, ancient and proud, and they heard her ask the question that no one had asked in a long time. What have you given? On Mars, workers in the terraforming stations stopped their shifts to discuss what they had seen. Many of them had come from mining colonies like the one on 22C's moon. They knew what it was like to be forgotten, to be used, to be told that they were not worth the cost of decent food or medicine. On the colonies, politicians who had been ignoring calls for worker reform suddenly found themselves facing crowds of angry citizens. "What have you given?" the signs said. "What have you given?" But the reaction that mattered most came from the ordinary people, the ones who had never thought much about mining colonies or corporate greed or the rights of workers on distant moons. They watched the video and they felt something stir in their hearts. A dragon had more compassion than the humans who ran the mine. A monster had more kindness than the executives in their heated buildings. And a child, a small hungry boy with nothing to his name, had taught her to hope again. Something was wrong with that picture. Something needed to change. The donations started small. A few credits here, a few credits there, sent through networks and charities to the colony on 22C's moon. But as the video kept spreading, the donations grew. Thousands of credits became millions. Millions became billions. People who had never heard of the colony before were now sending money to help the workers there. Medical ships were dispatched from Earth and Mars. They carried doctors and medicine and equipment, and they were staffed by volunteers who had watched the video and decided that they wanted to be part of something good. The ships would take weeks to arrive, but they were coming. Politicians who had ignored worker rights for years suddenly found themselves writing new laws. The corporations that ran the mining operations faced protests at their headquarters and boycotts of their products. Stock prices fell. Executives resigned. The whole rotten system that had kept workers poor and hungry for generations was starting to shake. And in the middle of it all, there was. He woke up on Christmas morning to find himself in his own bed. For a moment, he thought he had dreamed everything. The cave, the dragon, the warmth of scales against his cold skin. But when he sat up and looked around, he knew it had been real. His mother was already awake, standing at the window with tears running down her face. Mom got out of bed and went to her side. "What's wrong?" She pointed outside. The snow in front of their housing unit was covered with packages. Boxes of every size and color, wrapped in paper and ribbon, piled so high that they blocked the door. There were letters attached to many of them, handwritten notes from people whose names did not recognize. For his mother read from one of the letters. Her voice was shaking. "From a family on Mars. We saw the video. We saw what you did. Thank you for reminding us what Christmas is supposed to mean." "What video?" asked. His mother turned on their small screen, the one that barely worked, and showed him. He watched himself sleeping in the cave, curled against the side. He watched the dragon carry him through the snow and lay him gently outside his door. He watched her stand before the executives and speak words that made his heart feel too big for his chest. "A child on this colony shared his last food with me tonight." Started to cry. He did not know why. The tears just came, running down his cheeks and dripping onto his shirt, and he could not make them stop. "I just wanted to help," he whispered. She looked so sad. His mother knelt down and pulled him into her arms. She was crying too, but she was smiling at the same time. "You did help," she said. "You helped more than you know." Outside, the colony was waking up. People were coming out of their housing units to find packages on their doorsteps, donations from strangers across the galaxy. The mining company executives had locked themselves in their buildings, too afraid to come out after what had happened the night before. The guards had abandoned their posts. For the first time in years, the workers of 22C's third moon felt like someone cared about them. But did not care about any of that. He pulled away from his mother and ran for the door, pushing through the piles of packages until he could get outside. "Where are you going?" his mother called after him. "I have to find her," shouted back. "I have to find." He ran through the snow, his feet leaving small tracks that filled in quickly behind him. He ran past the housing units and the refinery and the administrative center where executives were hiding. He ran toward the mountains, toward the cave, toward the dragon who had changed everything. He had to tell her that the video was everywhere. He had to tell her that people were listening. He had to tell her that her words, her choice to be kind instead of angry, had made the whole galaxy pay attention. But most of all, he just wanted to see her again. He wanted to sit in the warm cave and talk to his friend. Because that was what was now. His friend. The only friend he had ever had who understood what it was like to be sad and alone and forgotten. He was halfway up the mountain when he saw her coming down. She moved slowly, her damaged wing dragging in the snow, but her eyes were bright when she saw him. She said, "You should not have run in this cold, you will freeze." "I had to find you," panted. He was out of breath and his lungs burned from the cold air, but he did not care. "I had to tell you. Everyone saw the video. Everyone heard what you said. They're sending help, ships and medicine and food. The whole galaxy is watching." Lowered her head until her eye was level with his. "I know," she said. "I have been listening. The humans are talking about many things today." "Are you happy?" The dragon was quiet for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I did not expect this. I thought I would speak and be ignored, but your kind surprised me. They listened. They cared." Some of them said, "Not the executives." "No, not them, but the others, the ordinary people, the ones who work and struggle and hope for better things." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "They heard me, and more importantly, they heard about you." Felt his face go red. "I didn't do anything special, I just shared my food." "You did the most special thing of all," said. "You chose kindness when you had every reason to choose selfishness. You gave when you had nothing to give. You saw a monster and offered her friendship." She brought her face closer to his. "That is the best of what your species can be, not the ships or the weapons or the cities among the stars. Just this. A small act of kindness that changed everything." Reached out and put his hand on her snout. Her scales were warm despite the cold air. "You changed everything too," he said. "You could have burned those buildings down, you could have hurt people, but you didn't. You talked to them instead." "I learned from a good teacher." They stood together in the snow, a boy and a dragon, and for a moment the whole galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then grinned. "Want to come see my presents? There's like 1,000,000 of them." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Lead the way, little one." And together, they walked back down the mountain toward the colony that was finally starting to wake up. The colony had never seen anything like it. A dragon walked through the streets between the housing units, and instead of running away, the workers came out to meet her. They stood in doorways and leaned out of windows and gathered in small groups to watch as moved slowly through the snow with walking beside her. No one screamed, no one called for weapons, no one was afraid. They had all seen the video. They knew what had done for them, what she had said to the executives who had kept them poor and hungry for so long. And they knew about the boy who had started it all by sharing his last meal with a stranger. "Thank you," someone called out. It was an old woman with gray hair and hands rough from decades of work. "Thank you for speaking for us." Others joined in. "Thank you, bless you, thank you for what you did." Stopped walking. She looked at the crowd of humans gathering around her and could see something shifting in her ancient eyes. For 400 years, she had hidden from these people. She had waited to die alone in her cave, hating them for what their ancestors had done. Now they were thanking her. "I did not do this for thanks," she said. Her voice was rough with emotion. "I did this because it was right. I did this because a child taught me that hatred is a choice, and I was tired of choosing it." "We know," the old woman said. "That's why we're thanking you." Felt his mother's hand on his shoulder. She had followed him from their housing unit, and now she stood behind him, looking up at the dragon with wonder in her eyes. She was still coughing, still sick from years of breathing refinery dust, but there was color in her cheeks that had not seen in a long time. "The medical ships," his mother said quietly, "they're really coming." "They are," confirmed. "I have been listening to the communications. 3 ships from Earth, 2 from Mars, 1 from the stations. They carry doctors and medicine and equipment. They will be here in 3 weeks. His mother closed her eyes and let out a breath. 3 weeks. I can hold on for 3 weeks. Turned and hugged her. He held on tight, pressing his face against her coat, and he felt her arms wrap around him in return. For the first time in 2 years since his father had died, he felt like maybe things were going to be okay. When he looked up again, there was a crowd of colony officials approaching. They were not the executives from the administrative center. Those people had already packed their things and were trying to book passage off the moon before the investigators arrived. These were different people. Local officials, elected by the workers themselves, who had been powerless for years against the mining company's control. The leader of the group was a tall woman named Director. She was Aunt, though they had never been close. The mining company had kept family members separated on purpose to prevent workers from organizing. Said formally, she did not seem afraid. The colony council has been in emergency session since this morning. We have reached a decision. Inclined her head, I am listening. The caves in the mountains where you have been living belong to you, legally, permanently. The council has declared them a protected sanctuary for any who wish to return. No human will be permitted to enter without your permission. Paused. It is a small thing compared to what was taken from your people, but it is what we can offer now. And the council has the authority to make this decision. Smiled grimly. The mining company's charter has been suspended by the Galactic Commerce Authority as of 1 hour ago. Their executives are facing criminal charges. Until a new company takes over operations, the council has full control of the colony. She looked at. Your friend here started something very big. Lowered her head until her eye was level with space. I accept your gift, and I offer one in return. The caves you have given me contain mineral deposits that your people do not yet have the technology to mine. In 50 years, perhaps 100, you will develop that technology. When you do, I will share those minerals with you freely, without cost, in payment for this kindness. His eyes went wide. That could be worth billions. Yes, straightened again. But today is not about wealth. Today is about something more important. She turned to face. Today is about a boy who taught me to hope again. The crowd parted as walked toward. She moved carefully, her damaged wing dragging in the snow until she stood directly in front of him. Then she lowered herself down, folding her legs beneath her massive body until her head was at his level. I am going to tell you something that I have never told a human, she said. Something that my kind has kept secret for thousands of years. Waited. We dragons do not give gifts the way your people do. We do not wrap them in paper or put them under trees. When we want to give something precious to someone we care about, we give them a piece of ourselves. Reached up with one claw and touched her own chest, right where her heart would be. I give you this, my friendship, my protection, my promise that as long as I live, you will never be alone again. Felt tears running down his face again. He did not try to stop them this time. I thought overlooked us, he whispered. I thought nobody cared about kids like me. You were wrong. His voice was gentle now, gentler than had ever heard it. Did not overlook you. He simply came in a different form than you expected. He came with scales instead of a red coat. He came with fire instead of a sleigh. He came because a small boy showed him that kindness matters more than everything else. Threw his arms around his neck. He could not wrap them all the way around because she was too big, but he tried anyway. He held on as tight as he could, pressing his face against her warm scales, and he felt her wing curl around him like a blanket. Thank you, he said. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being mine, replied. The crowd watched in silence. Many of them were crying too. They had never seen anything like this before. A human child hugging a dragon. Two species that had been enemies for generations, brought together by a shared meal on a cold night. This was what Christmas was supposed to be. This was what humanity had forgotten somewhere along the way to the stars. Not the presents or the trees or the decorations, just this. Connection, kindness, the simple act of caring about someone else. His mother stepped forward and put her hand on her son's shoulder. "We should go home," she said softly. "You have presents to open, and your friend can come with us if she wants." Looked at the small housing unit, at the piles of packages still stacked outside the door. "I would like that," she said. "I have never celebrated Christmas before." "Then we'll teach you," said. He pulled back from the hug and grabbed Claw in his small hand. "Come on, it's going to be the best Christmas ever." They walked together through the snow, a boy and his mother and a dragon. Behind them, the colony was coming alive with hope and change, and the promise of better days to come. And far above, in the gray sky that was just starting to clear, the first star appeared. It shone down on the frozen moon like a blessing, like a promise, like the universe itself was saying that this was right. This was how it was supposed to be. 20 years later, Ambassador would stand before the Galactic Council at his side. He would broker the first true peace treaty between humans and ending centuries of tension and opening a new era of cooperation. He would be called a hero, a visionary, a bridge between worlds. But when reporters asked him how it all started, he would always tell the same story. "I found a dragon in a cave on Christmas Eve. She looked sad, so I shared my food with her." He would smile then, the same smile he had given in that warm cave so long ago. "My dad always said that's how you fix things. You start with kindness and you see where it goes." And standing beside him would add, "Sometimes comes with scales instead of a sleigh. Sometimes hope has wings. And sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the entire galaxy." That was the lesson they had learned together on that cold Christmas night. That was the lesson they spent the rest of their lives teaching others. And it all started with a boy who believed that nobody should be alone.